about this movie. Can you tell me about was always kind of like that rivalry, camaraderie among stuntmen?
The stunt rivalry between.
Yeah,
Come up here, will you? I can't hear you. Come up here and have a seat, dude. You're gonna get in on this too.
I'll give him a mic and we'll let him-
sorry.
Yeah. Here's the next big
I'm
star.
stuck in everything.
I loved the movie. So when I was a kid,
Cool.
just could you talk about the rivalry and camaraderie back in the old days?
Rivalry and camaraderie?
Or was that?
Well, it's interesting if that is what you said. I think that there was a lot of rivalry and a lot more camaraderie. But I think the rivalry between stuntmen back then, by most standards, was very healthy, and we all wanted to do the best we could do and be better than everybody else, just like we're all those alpha males and alpha females as well. And, we all wanted to do and be the best. So there was a huge rivalry, I think, very healthy rivalry. The camaraderie was something that, was just amazing. It was like, everybody, all the stuntmen, especially all the ones that worked on Hooper and that I worked around in that day, were all brothers. They were all, you would do anything for them. They would do pretty much anything for you. There was people that had different ideals and different social structures and different understandings of how life should be. But when it came to doing stunt work, we all hung in there real tight together. And it still is pretty much that way. But it's something that, you can't really put a finger on or talk about it too much. It's just something that exists. I mean, we probably, in family life, you have brothers and sisters that you can count on, even though you do have arguments with them or don't see exactly everything in the same light. But camaraderie was number one.
Tell them a little bit about the Stunts Unlimited basketball games. It seems like there were a lot of fights going on in our basketball games. Even though we loved each other, there were a lot of fights going on.
Billy.
You mean?
Oh, Billy, come in and sit down. Billy Burton, guys.
Woohoo!
Oh, and Gary. Have a seat. Oh, take this one. I'll put this one over there.
One thing Hal Needham did back in the day is that rarely did he ever use your first name. It was either Combs, Combsy, Burton, Hooker, Huff, whatever. It was like, did you notice that Hal never used your first name?
Well, he was military, and in the military, they always use your last name. They never say your first name. Was like you say, Hooker, Burton, whomever. That's strictly military. If you know Billy Lucas, he'll do the same thing. He'll never call you by Bill. He'll say Burton.
Yeah. So anyway, Combsy.
Yes.
Actually, his name is Gary Combs, but we call him Combsy.
Woohoo!
Right.
Or Murdoch. We called him Murdoch back in the day.
That's my middle name.
Really?
Still Murdoch.
Murdoch.
I would keep that a secret.
About Needham, though, that was really a fun movie. I hadn't seen it in a while. And I kind of thought it might have been his best movie. And I know Smokey and the Bandit was a big, huge thing, but he really got to showcase his bros, his buddies. And yes, that whole location down there was the real deal. And it was going to be demolished anyway. So they made a deal to go down there and demolish it on film. And I don't know how many cameras Needham had, but all of that stuff was
12.
just set up and designed by the cameras.
12.
Well, I had 17 on one movie, but
Yeah.
so 12's not real big. But
That thing was a big deal because in the beginning, when we were doing that long run to the rocket car jump over the bridge, he had like 12 cameras on that, a couple in the air, and it was the first time that he was going to shoot a shot, according to Hal, from the beginning to the end. From when they said action, we did that whole run with the explosions. I mean, it went on and on and on forever. And I think Hal, in his naive director's mind at the time, that he was going to run that as one solid piece of film, which they do that stuff nowadays. But I'm not sure Hal really had the concept of how that was going to work.
Oh,
And
I think he did. I totally do.
Well, he cut the hell out of it, I'll tell you
Well,
that.
you have to. That's why you have 12 cameras.
But-
You don't, you shoot all of it at once, but you have 12 cameras, and reasons you have 12 different cuts.
But his idea, as far as I gathered at the time, was to have that piece of footage run the whole time, you know, so.
Well, I don't, what, one camera the whole time? No, it was meant to be all 12, Joe. Come on. You're not giving the guy credit. He was ingenious. He showcased Hollywood. All of you people here that are stunt people, recipients of what Needham did for the stunt community. I'm here to tell you, we all owe that man a lot. And a lot of people were jealous of Hal Needham. And you know what? And I tell them, guys, he's paving the way for you. First director to first stuntman to direct a good movie called Smokey and the Bandit. And everybody was mad and jealous at him. And I'm here to say, guys, he just made it easier for the rest of us. That's all he did. We owe him a big round of applause. And that thing was mapped up and set up, and it went off. I was there, Joe. I watched you. I saw the whole thing, and I was driving those other cars and turning them over and whatnot while you were doing that. And it went off without
were?
a hitch. That's when I poked you in the eye. You were out in the box. Remember when I stuck my finger in your eye and you quit doing that? I remember that.
Colmsy, was that true? Was that true what they're saying?
That's true, believe me. He was a little hard to work for, because if you didn't do what he wanted you to do, he'd put the clothes on and do it for you. So everybody did what they were supposed to do, and they did the best of the ability, and you know, hopefully it all went off right. With him, it was he was always in a hurry, so you better be prepared, and don't make him wait, okay? So.
That's why you're back in the hotel by 2 in the afternoon. He was like Eastwood. He could get it done, had it figured out, mapped out. It was done right and done perfectly, and it was ingenious.
And
when
straight
we-
to the bar.
When we did
Or other places.
when Joe and I did the chariot race, he was doubling Michael and I was doubling Bert, and I had to make the jump from one chariot over to Joe's horses and stop them. And the first time I went to make the jump, the rig I had to hold the team in where I could get to him broke. So we had to do a second time, and Hal says, "No, I got it. I said, "No, you don't got it. You know, I didn't make the jump, you know." So I had to really talk to the guy, because he was going to print and move on, because he knew he didn't actually need that part. He was going to be on Bert anyway, but I talked him into it, so we went back, and Joe had to drag again, but that time I made the jump. So, but you better be there the first time for Hal, believe me.
All right, more questions. Anybody throw a hand up here and we'll ask more questions. Come on, there's got to be some questions. All right,
I got
Annabelle.
one. So, who did the final jump? Was that you, Buddy Joe? That big car jump at the end?
No, that was, you know, we did a couple of test jumps, which we can go into those later, with the real rocket car, with me driving. Supposedly, in the original concept was that we were going to jump the gap there with a car. They were designing it to do that. Bill Fredericks had one built. The first time we jumped the rocket car, I think it was on the 118 freeway or something before it was opened. We jumped at about 198 feet or something like that. And it had ailerons on the side like an airplane, that when the rocket car took off, they were going to try to control its flight with these, you know, remote controlled ailerons on this car, right? Which, like, I had no idea what ailerons were or what they were up to. I was just the guy in the seat. But consequently, the car landed so hard, it was a ramp to the ground landing, and busted all those off. So they never did work right, and they scrapped that idea.
Well, with the exception to that jump that was made by a car that was manless, that car wasn't this wide. The rest of it was done for real. Every piece there was no CGI, none of that BS. we did real stunts in those days. They don't do those anymore. And that jump that they made, all the practice jumps was well earned, but that
Yeah.
car was remote control, bingo, and it worked like a champ.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah, there's no way, I don't know what they had in their heads when they thought that we would actually be able to complete that jump, but we were working towards it the whole time. I mean, that was the aim. And at some point, someone's better senses got a hold of them and said, no, we're not going to do that. And so one day I was reading the script and I said to Hal, Hal, dude, it says here the guy's going to make like 50 grand for making this jump, right? And I think the adjustment we've been talking about was like 5 grand or something for these test jumps. You know, the movies, Joe.
Where are all those other
What's
zeros?
the deal here? So it was a great, and even 5,000 per test jump was a pretty big deal back in those days for us anyway.
Well, everything Needham did was groundbreaking, guys. The first cannon turnover, the nitrogen ratchet, all that stuff came through him and his family of stunt people. And so everything he did was for real, and it was groundbreaking. And the guy had an idea, and he had some luck, like we all needed. And he was amazing, and I just think that it was really a good movie and a fun movie to watch, and he showcased everybody, and he showed the ins and outs of producers and directors and first ADs, and had fun with it. It was a lot of fun.
Yep. Okay, one more question over here. What do you got?
This might be a really dumb question, but what was the most challenging stunt in this movie?
Buddy Joe getting up in the morning. I don't know, Joe. What do you think, Gary? I don't know.
Remember that camaraderie and what was the other rivalry?
Well, you know, my question for that guy that had that question, was he talking about Stunts Unlimited and the Stuntmen's Association back in the day when we all split up? I kind of had the feeling,
Or I think just trying to outdo one another, like who has the best.
so it wasn't the political thing, it was, well, you know, what's one thing when you work for Needham and Joe's doing a stunt, Gary and I are helping him. And vice versa. You didn't sit around and play cards like you did working for those other coordinators. You all jumped in and grabbed a shovel, a rake, or got his pads, or got his horse ready, or hung his steps on his saddles, whatever it was. Like the coach when I wrecked on that movie, Combs set it all up for me. I was off doing another movie. I came there and it was all set up, and we did the wagon wreck. And so with Needham, it was a team. There was no. In the old days when I first came, they would resent you if you got to do the job. They would resent you because you're going to make the money. Needham, when he paid adjustments in the day, he made sure he spread the work around and the adjustments around so it would be somewhat equal.
Also, I think I watched a transition. When I first got the business, the horse guys did the horse work, the car guys did the car work, the swords guys did the sword work. Well, when Needham came along, he could do everything. Well, I mean, he wasn't a swordsman, but I mean, he could pretty well do just about anything you wanted to do. So the group of guys he put together, you did everything. You could ride a motorcycle, you could drive a car, you could ride a horse, you could drive a team. So, I mean, the thing of the horse guys doing the horse work and the car guys doing the car work, that all went out the window when he came along, you know, and he got his group together. So, you know, he was very...
What was the name of that group?
became Stunts Unlimited.
So what was the most difficult sequence of that, do you think? Buddy Joe, anything?
For me personally speaking, I mean, the smokestack thing and all that was rather harrowing, and, you know, all the driving was cool, but it was really, you know, not that big a deal. The thing that probably was personally the most exciting for me was that rappel down the the building there.
It was slow though, didn't you
And
think?
just a little slow. Well, I'm sure you would have gone a lot faster.
God, have fun with
Anyway,
yourself.
the deal was, is back in that day, is that rappelling was something that was, you know, a new word. Some mountain climbers did it, some places in the Alps and stuff, but rappelling for the stunt world was a rather new deal. We did some on a film called Tobruk and all that way earlier, but they didn't even have ropes made for that distance. It was like 250 feet or something like that. And they didn't even have ropes. Hal had to go to Goldline, this company, and have special ropes made for that distance. And it was a little concerning, especially at the top a couple of times on the first take going over. I got kind of hung up and had to unhook everything and pull myself back up to go again. So, you know, it was like, it wasn't a technique that everybody was totally into it. And as much as I had practiced it, I found out I wasn't totally into it either. But anyway, that was the one that probably, for me, was the most interesting.
Well, you know, talking about Needham and the airbag, they invented the airbag for pole vaulters, and the max you could go was 30 feet, and pole vaulters would go about 20 feet into it. So we got the airbag, and we went out there, and we crawled in it, and guys fell off into it. And then we put it on cardboard boxes and 1x12s, and that was the invent of the airbag, right there at the stables where Needham had his horses.
What was the name of that stable?
I won't tell you the nickname, Myers and Wills.
Oh, we gotta go for the nickname?
Oh, we can't talk about
It's
the
a mixed
nickname.
crowd here. Let's go.
Almost got him.
Who owned the black horse?
Bobby Davenport,
Bobby Davenport.
one of the greatest horse trainers of all time.
It was a beautiful horse.
Horse was named
called
Ott.
Butte. That was, wasn't it? Butte?
Ott.
Ott, that was it.
I put the first pair of shoes on him.
Chris O'Hara.
I've heard just stories that Burt Reynolds' character is basically based on Hal Needham, and then Jan Michael Vincent is based on you. Does that have any truth?
Or who you asking?
Well, Buddy Joe. I mean, or who are those characters loosely based on?
I'm sure when Hal was putting it all together, you know, I talked to him a lot. I'm sure he talked to every young guy that was around him at the time about, you know, what that situation was between the old and the new and everything. And I see a lot of, well, not a lot, but some of Hal Needham in Burt Reynolds' character. I think Burt brought a lot of the lackadaisical part to it, you know, a little bit more humor maybe than Hal presented most of the time, that I noticed. But I think there was a lot of Hal and Burt in that character. As far as the other character with Jan, I think that, you know, there were some things in the film that really, now that you asked me, that were really part of Hal Needham and my existence in the beginning. When I first started, we were doing a film called Tobruk, and
That was after Bo Jest.
yeah. But anyway, we were doing this. No, actually, it was Bo Jest when this happened. Right, you're right. So anyway, a friend of my father's was directing the film Bo Jest that Hal Needham was the stunt coordinator on. And one thing that stunt coordinators hate worse than anything, as evidenced in the film, is when a director tells a stunt coordinator or a producer tells a stunt coordinator that he has to hire someone and use them as a stuntman, right? Well, what happened on Tobruk is that
Bo Jest.
Bo Jest. Bo Jest is the next movie we're going to show here. Okay, so on Bo Jest was that my father asked Doug Hayes, the director, would you talk to Hal Needham and see if you could have any influence on getting my son, who's working as an extra on the movie, get him a job working for Hal as a stuntman on the show. So, of course, Doug Hayes goes to Hal and tells Hal, I want you to hire this kid, Buddy Joe Hooker, to do stunts on your movie. So Hal hired me, and I got to do a fantastic stunt on the movie, doing